Excellent. All right, we're ready to get started.
Yep.
Welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is data. It's a term that all of us are very familiar with and use on a day-to-day basis, but it's also one of the most underestimated, misunderstood, and underutilized assets in our toolkit. With the workforce that is really diverse, one of the most diverse it has ever been, it has never been more important to understand them better and cater to their needs. They also have a lot of expectations from enterprises. And enterprises have really accelerated digital transformation, and that has driven them to adopt and implement various systems, leading to complexity, a lot of data collection, many times poor practices of data collection, and using it. But all of this has also raised the awareness and sensitivity towards data privacy. It's something that we at Tidy care a lot about, and are always making sure is embedded in the philosophy of everything we do when we work with customers, and also deep in the product itself. So as you can see, data is not a very light subject. But to get started, it is important to understand its potential before you start using it. And this is why we're here today. To talk about this today, I have my co-founder and CEO of Tidy, Kiran Menon, who will share a few simple ways in which you can think about data and unleash the power of data in your organization. So over to you, Kiran.
Thanks, Gaurabh. So yeah, I think that was a pretty in-depth introduction. And I think when we think about data, there's always just so much that you have to kind of think about, that you have to, consider before you even start planning what you can do with data. So I think it was apt that we had the introduction that was that in-depth, because like you said, it's a very complicated topic. And what we try to do with all our customers is try and actually demystify this whole notion that data is science and it's going to be super complicated, but there's always an easy way to start. So I think that's what I also want to kind of touch upon in this webinar, where we can talk through certain examples, real life examples that we are seeing with some of our customers. How are they using data across the experience? And also, how will it be possible for you as an organization to be able to build some of those practices internally, no matter what stage of maturity you're in? So this is, probably the essence of the entire webinar. Data is gold. Nothing is new over there. But it's equally important to understand where this data is coming from. And the reason I say this is because you can get multiple types of data, multiple sources of data. You can have, complicated data that has been worked upon already. You can have raw data that has not been worked upon at all. And so where the data comes from is really, really important when you start thinking about where can I use data to improve the employee experience. And so all data is not equal. If you think about onboarding, you have data coming in from your recruitment system, you have data coming in from your verification process, from feedback, from learning. In fact, one of the things we see is most companies don't realize that the application form that the individual is filling up is a great source of data. Right? I am actually, as a new hire, going to come in, put in my entire, demographic information, my work experience, my education experience. I'm going to talk about my family, because if there's insurance, if there's, nominations that need to come in, I'm going to start talking about or giving all of that data to the company. Unfortunately, what happens is all of that data is locked up in various processes and it doesn't flow through across multiple processes. And that's why it starts becoming tough to understand the data that you have or the potential that you have as well. For example, if you kind of look at, I would say, if you look at all these different types of data. The more data we have, the more we can actually understand it. So I gave you the example of the application forms, right? So I'm giving you my medical, educational, my certificates. I'm going to be giving some feedback on, questions that you've asked me, surveys. Hey, how would you rate the interview process? How would you rate your first week? How would you rate your 30-day period, 90-day, whatever it may be? All of this data comes back to really deliver a very powerful, I would say, subset that can be used to enhance the experience. And I think, without sitting on this theoretical level for too long, I think it's a good time to kind of dig into some of the examples that we have seen enterprises across the world kind of use and see how they could improve their entire employee experience, right from the new hire experience all the way even through offboarding, right? So the first thing I'll talk about is data really helps teams move fast and helps teams move fast to kind of make sure that compliance processes like background verification, compliance processes like the form that I was talking about, reduce the need for communication back and forth and complete those processes in the shortest time possible. What that translates into is a much easier process for me because, if there is a system which knows, hey, Kiran's going to be joining the New York office as a VP of sales, and therefore he needs to upload certain documents, he needs to upload or complete a form which has XYZ data points. And also he needs to understand at each step what is expected of him. That makes it a much easier process for me. Traditionally, what happens is because it's a manual process, I have to go and figure out, hey, I'm a New York office employee, VP of sales. What are the documents that may be required of me? Now, when you bring in data, you really reimagine that process and you really improve the time to hire because fundamentally, each individual now suddenly has information that's only relevant to them and it's completely personalized to them. So they're not trying to find information. I think that's one of the biggest, most tangible advantages that you can find if you use data properly. How do you eliminate all that searching and all that noise by delivering only what I need to know when I need to know it? And how do you do that? You need metadata. You need data like where am I joining, which position, which designation, at what level, what kind of policies matter to me, what kind of compliance processes matter to me. How do I reduce background verification noise? Because Tidy or another application can tell you, hey, by the way, you only need to upload these 4 or 5 things, and then just hang back, and everything is running as per process, right? So data helps teams move fast. I cannot stress upon that enough. We have seen it multiple times, bringing down turnaround times for verification, bringing down turnaround times for compliance processes. Huge opportunity across the board. I would say the other process that really helps or really brings about a lot of value is how data enables people teams, people managers to become a lot more proactive. And I think this is one of the lesser known use cases or the lesser or rather less common use case, because there just aren't applications out there today which kind of give you this data, right? What does it mean to be proactive? As a people manager, it means if I know that you are potentially, facing an issue, there's a problem, I should be able to reach out to you before you have to figure out how do I contact support, who do I contact, where do I reach out, what do I have to say? If a simple example, and we see this working beautifully across organizations, there's a simple pulse question that comes up on day 2, on my second day at work. Hey, Kiran, how was your first day? Did your buddy help you get settled? Rate it on a 5-star scale. What would happen traditionally is I would rate it, you know, perhaps that data would go into the system. It'll be part of the noise that, you know, most survey tools kind of will deliver. And fundamentally, what that's going to mean is I might, as an HR manager, realize that Kiran had a terrible first day, maybe only 1 month from now. But what if the system could immediately alert my HR manager if I gave it a 2-star? Now that is being proactive. You're not waiting for day 30, day 60, day 90. It's no longer a postmortem case. You are actually looking at immediate responsiveness as an organization. And that is incredibly powerful. Think about it. I gave it a 2-star rating. And within a couple of hours, I get a call from my HR manager or from my hiring manager saying, hey, Kiran, we realized yesterday was terrible, but how can we help correct it so that, your day 2 and first week is a comfortable week? That is powerful. Anticipating where people might start dropping off, that is the power data can potentially give. I'm not saying organizations don't have this data, but the way it's used needs to become a lot more proactive than reactive, because surveys and other mechanisms of collecting data is very reactive. You're always kind of looking at a big picture and then trying to break it down. Then 1 month later, there's an analysis that comes out and then you kind of do something about it. Very often it's already too late. So you really need to become a lot more proactive, a lot more current, a lot more real time, and anticipate behaviors. For example, if someone is going to be slipping away, someone's going to be, potentially in danger of dropping off, someone had a terrible experience, immediate response. Data can really help you become proactive from that perspective. The other opportunity is it really allows, again, managers to become a lot more efficient. And when I say managers, don't just think about, the HR manager and the hiring manager. There are multiple other roles that come into delivering a great employee experience. Think about it, you have IT, you have admin, you have ops, you have your financial teams, you have legal and compliance, you have what have you. You have many others that come together to really build that employee experience. With data, you should have an organization that is integrating and unifying all these various roles, all these various systems, and therefore driving completion without having to drop off anywhere in the process. So if you could have timely AI driven nudges, an example over here on the screen, 6 candidates are ready to onboard, go ahead and assign their buddies for them immediately, right? So it's a simple step in the onboarding process. Very often, most organizations find it very tough to maintain this level of discipline or this level of operational excellence, especially when scaling starts to happen. If there are 3 people involved and 3 people joining, and that's the scale of your hiring, it's much easier. But when you think about 100, 200,000, 10,000, 100,000 people, it becomes really, really tough to enable these processes, because managers need to get timely nudges to make sure that they're completing their processes on time. Simple process, for example, is, hey, by the way, did you know that this survey has already been completed by 75% of your peers? Now that's using data to drive my efficiency, because when I see that 7 out of 10 people have already completed this, I don't want to be that 1 in the 3 that haven't completed it. So even from a psychological perspective, from a behavior perspective, you can use data to really drive efficiency. And we use gamification, for example, also to drive efficiency within individuals' behavior patterns, to make sure that people are completing processes on time every single time, right? So really reduce the amount of drop-offs from a process. And the way you can do that is by driving a lot of data in real time and AI driven intelligent data to the right person at the right time. I think the couple of last ones that I'll kind of touch upon and then maybe open it up for questions as well is everyone today talks about personalization. We're all consumers. We're all consumers where we, have our favorite delivery service. We have our favorite e-commerce service, our favorite, clothing store online, whatever it may be. One thing all of them do really well is build that relationship with me. They know enough about me to say, hey, by the way, we have a new shirt that's come out and a new style. We think this might be something that you're interested in. And very often it is. But how do they know that? That's because they're using data to really personalize the experience for me, right? That e-commerce store is using all my clicks, all my behaviors, all my purchases, all my, intents, picking all of that up and understanding who I am and then driving a completely personalized experience for me. Till now, within the organization for employees, no one has looked at personalization at that scale. But it's not because it's not because it's not possible. It's primarily because that data was not available in the right shape and right form. And what do I mean by that? A simple example is I'm joining the organization. I filled out my application form, which we talked about earlier. That has completed my verification process seamlessly. I've gotten all my notifications on time. But then on day 2, I get benefits that I need to go and apply for, benefits that I need to go and, sign up for. What this really does, traditionally, benefits has been just, a cookie cutter. Everyone gets the same thing. You have to go figure out what works for you. But what if there was a scenario where the organization understands that I'm a parent of a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old and suddenly realizes that, out of the 35 benefits that are available to me, that daycare service, the free daycare service that the company provides, is probably going to be on my top 5 list. Unfortunately, that 40-page document, I'm never going to read through and I might miss out on that, right? So I think there is a fundamental opportunity for organizations to become a lot more like consumer brands, where they can understand who are the people joining them. And it's not like we're not giving organizations this data. This data already exists within the organization. Use that data to really personalize the whole experience and build segmentations or groups or cohorts of people and start targeting these, these cohorts, these groups with much more personalized experiences. Benefits is one example. Learning, there's so much potential to personalize the whole learning operation. And at scale, even if it's a 100,000 person organization, it can seem like the organization is bending itself and molding itself around me. And that's possible today with the power of data that's available, right? So really kind of think about how you can use that wealth of data that you already have to really personalize the experience for each individual anywhere in the globe. And that's possible with today's applications. And that's possible if you start thinking about data from day one and how it can be used with personalization in focus. One of the other big things that we've seen a lot is by building that unified and contextual experience. Now, we've been talking a lot about, how it's going to affect the employee experience positively. How is it going to help me deliver a better experience for my new hires, for my employees as an HR leader? How is it going to drive better process improvement and efficiency? But another big reason data is becoming important is because if you can create a single unified dashboard where everything that you need to know about the individual was available on one screen, And I know this sounds like utopia. This sounds like, a dream that'll never be possible, because whenever I talk to customers, it's it's almost a dream state. It's a dream state because there are just so many applications and so many data sets. How do you bring it all together? But it's possible. And we do this today for a lot of the organizations we work with, where we can pick up data from multiple systems, pick up data from multiple processes, from multiple actors, and deliver that single unified profile where I no longer need to go to 7 different systems, export Excel sheets, come back onto my computer, put those data points into an Excel sheet, an 8th Excel sheet, do pivot tables, and then figure out, oh man, Kiran has not completed his documents, and that's why his whole process has been delayed. It is possible today to really create a single unified profile view for each individual and be able to track all the key stages that they're completing, whether it's onboarding, offboarding, whatever the process may be. And also, then the power of this is not just the data, but what are you going to do with it? So I can now see everything about one individual on one page, making me much more efficient as a people manager, and also making me a lot more efficient as an individual who can service my employees, my team, my cohort, my new hires, whoever it may be. So really, the definition of data very often is misunderstood as just analytics and how it can be used for analytics. But what we have seen today is that really, if you think about data, it can really help you build an organization that's efficient, that's completing processes super fast, very personal from an experience perspective. You can deliver an experience that is personalized to the nth level and deliver a proactive service. The analytics should be an outcome of all of this. You don't start your data story by looking at it from an analytics perspective, because then it's always going to be a disjointed experience. Till you bring everything together, till your processes become efficient, till you deliver a personalized experience, and till you can deliver a proactive support organization, don't think about analytics and how can I drive a unified profile, because then it's going to be a disconnected analytics dashboard. You're going to get raw data, you're not going to get much inference value from it. And so, which is why even in this presentation, I've kept the analytics as the last piece, because it really helps drive better analytics only when you have these 4 pillars in place from a data perspective. With that, I think, I'm open to some questions. I see that there are some questions coming up on the chat, but, Gaurabh, I'll let you kind of ask the questions.
Yeah. No, that was excellent. I think it's super well-rounded, and I think the last bit that you talked about, which is, analytics on the goal, it's about driving action, really summarizes it. But there are definitely a couple of questions. I would say, when you talk about data, one of the key questions is about data security, and there's a question about that. So maybe we can start off with, a tactical question of that sort, and then there are a couple of things that, I also see that I'd like to ask you about, if you have the time.
Yeah, sure. No, actually, the whole point about ethical and secure data is something that you'll kind of see popping up more and more. Now, fundamentally, I think, while enterprises are really concerned about this, what really shocks me is, being very candid, is how data has been treated in enterprises till now. There's a lot of data floating around. There's data floating around in Excel sheets. There's data being sent to vendors over emails. There's a lot of PII information, personally identifiable information, being shared in these ways. So it really is an imperative for you when you're designing the whole data flow and your entire data strategy to think about security and and especially from an ethical perspective, you need to be very clear with your employees, with your teams, as to why you're using their data, where is it going to go, how is it going to be used, who's going to have access to it. Today it's also a requirement under GDPR and CCPA and those kind of laws that have been passed. But I think it's also a great way to think about the service you deliver to your employees. And security becomes even more important in that case, because you no longer should be sending sensitive information, employee data to, through email or through documents. You should have a completely interconnected network of data where everything is happening with encryption in place. So even if it's an API integration between your onboarding system and your HCM, there has to be a secure, authenticated, encrypted API mechanism for that data to flow. So I would say that becomes cornerstone of designing your entire data program.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's valuable, and it's clear to kind of how one should go about it. You talked about operational excellence. I think there's a question kind of related to that. So what is the best time in the employee lifecycle to put a data strategy in place? Because when you talk about operations, it is interconnected, right? So how does one get started, and what is the optimal place to really start when you're thinking about putting a data strategy in place?
So by best time, I'm assuming you're talking about the employee lifecycle. When should you start kind of using it?
In the employee lifecycle, what is the best opportunity to do that?
I actually think, it's onboarding, because fundamentally that is probably the most stressful part of the employee lifecycle. I'm not talking about it just from a new hire perspective, even from a process perspective. It is that one time where there are multiple systems that are having to kind of work together, multiple people that are having to work together in order to make onboarding a success. Everyone assumes HR is the owner of onboarding, and that means all tasks are HR responsibilities. But that's not the case, because only about 40% is HR. There's another 35%, which is IT. There's ops, there's admin, there's financial systems, there's compliance and legal. So there are multiple actors, and therefore I think the best time to think about data strategy is to start from when the individual starts interacting with you as a candidate who has accepted an offer and is starting to give you data. Because at the end of the day, data in an organization for an HR team is employee data. You don't really, I wouldn't say care, but you don't really need customer data, for example. You need employee data. That's how you can deliver a better experience. When does employee data start flowing in? That's at onboarding. That's when all the data starts flowing in. And that's when there's a huge kind of, dam of, or a watershed moment of data coming into the organization. So it's definitely the onboarding process.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to hear. I think there's some related questions, which I can maybe just collate. And I know we have only 1 minute, but because there's some good questions, I think I'm going to ask if you can extend a little bit. But so there are few questions, and let me kind of read them. So one of them is really about how long does it usually take to integrate all of these systems, and I'm kind of seeing this as a question that comes from this place of feeling like it's a burden, right? So it definitely could seem intimidating. So I would also kind of maybe just take another question that we have, which kind of talks about the other extreme is we can maybe answer the question about how long it takes, but related to that, there's another thing as like, what can I do with minimal data? Because what is my easiest way to get started?
Yeah. So I think, the time is, I can give you an average time, but there is a lot of factors that go into a complete integration strategy. We have seen it takes about 4 to 5 months to kind of build out the entire design and deploy it. So from design and workshops, which kind of take you through planning the whole data infrastructure, planning the whole data flow, planning the various actors as part of the process, to actually then going in and configuring it, API integrations, getting all of that in place, it does take about 4 to 5 months to kind of to build that whole thing out. I'm talking about an enterprise which is 100,000 people, multiple geographies spread out, and therefore has a lot of complexities as well, because every single geography will have complexities when it comes to data. You know, what's required, what's not required, what can be asked, what can't be asked, what can be used, what can't be used. So the all of that kind of goes into the whole design process and then the deployment of it. But I think you should actually get started from a data strategy perspective today, even if you don't have a single system that's connected to another. If everything sits in silos, you should still be using data to deliver a better experience. And a simple example is, you know, nowadays we have remote workers, hybrid workers, we have consultants, freelancers, permanent employees, so many different types of, I would say, people within the organization. And you need to deliver the best experience for everyone. It can't be, you know, one type of employee gets the best experience and the other one doesn't. So I would say, even assuming the little bit of data that you already have today, putting that down in an Excel sheet, putting all the various data points that you have that you have access to today, and then figuring out how you can use that to personalize the experience to improve efficiency of processes. So I would say the ideal time to start is now. And it doesn't matter how much you have, or it's integrated or not integrated, but you start with what you have.
Super. And so to wrap it up, one last question, and I'll also kind of add some of our experience with it. The question is around how long before you actually start seeing ROI once you've created this, right? And I know with the work that we do with our customers, and I'll let you kind of follow on as an extension of that answer, is it starts with benchmarking where we are today, right? When we work with customers, I know that the ROI is really dependent on where you are today and what kind of move you want to make. So that's what I definitely kind of understand. I wanted to kind of add that kind of baseline about benchmarking where you are today with regard to the question about how long before you see actual ROI. But do you have anything to add related to that?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of key things to kind of look at from an ROI perspective, especially when you're thinking about a unified system or a unified process or a unified experience, right? One is, how does it impact the employee, that individual person who is looking for information, who's looking for guidance, is looking for, anything that can help them get their processes done faster. So that's definitely an ROI, and that usually results in a better experience, results in higher retention numbers. But there's a second ROI, which is, how does it help impact the work of your people partners, your people managers, your HR teams, your support functions. And if your data strategy does not include that ROI or does not include all of those actors, then I don't think you're looking at an ROI holistically. And so I would say that if you put both these together, in my experience, you generally start seeing ROI within the first 6 months itself, because it's very quick to start firing on all cylinders and giving you that value, and giving not just the organization, but each individual actor the value as well. So within 6 months, you will start seeing ROI from the whole process.
Cool. Thanks, Kiran. I think we've gone 4 minutes over, so I'll wrap this up. So data can be used, based on your presentation, to build a responsive organization. I think you talked about how you can empower multiple teams because, data or onboarding or any of these programs are not handled only by one single team. I think operational excellence is something that you've touched upon multiple times related to data, and I think that is critical. But more importantly, I think it also kind of leans towards the other aspect, which is about building better relationships, right? Because data is not only something that is analytical, it also is something that informs empathy based on the kind of data you actually use. And lastly, I think one of the things that I loved what you talked about was analytics are not really the goal, but it's all about driving action. So, with that, thanks, Kiran, for sharing all of these insights. And thank you, everyone, for joining. If you have any questions about anything we discussed today, just reach out to us or schedule a demo to learn more about how Tidy solves these problems. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you so much.